What's up, everybody? So this part of, can we all yeah. So for this conference, I wanted to have different sections. So you have founder talks where founders are telling their stories. We have tactical talks where people are giving like practical advice. And then we want to do a part that was a little bit more interactive so you can see somebody getting feedback live. Hopefully some of the feedback will be applicable to your businesses, but just to see the general mindset and see the feedback going back and forth. And so first up, we have Suzanne from Private Packs. Tani.
Hi, everyone. Do I get a mic? Thank you.
Tell us what Private Packs is and what's your biggest challenge?
Okay, so my company is named Private Pack. So any of you use like an ice pack or a hot pack on a joint or a sore elbow or a muscle? My product is similar to that, but I make it exclusively for the privates. Yes. Yes. So I thought of the product after a Brazilian wax. The young lady unfortunately ripped off all of my skin.
Damn.
So I refused.
I don't know what it's like, but
Yeah, it's painful. So I refused to put frozen veggies on myself. So I decided, let me think of a solution. And not knowing when I thought of the solution, other women told me that they could use it after childbirth, after a soul cycle, after a UTI, and so much more. So here's my product. Frank, if you can hold the microphone for me. So there are two parts to this. So one pack is cold, one pack is hot. Oh, shoot. Sorry.
just stop.
So here's your gel. And they're both reusable. And I already showed the judges the hot one in the back. It actually has a metal disc that activates the heat mechanism. And the cold, you put it in the fridge or the freezer and provides temperature for about 20 to 30 minutes. Not more than that, because after 30 minutes, the skin stops absorbing temperature. Every pack is sold with a reusable sleeve that's highly absorbent, leak-proof, and microbial. And there's also a disposable sleeve option for women that don't have that much discharge, like say after pregnancy, but something similar like, just soreness, maybe after rough sex. So.
All right. So, what's the stage of your company right now, and what's your biggest challenge?
So right now, I am pre-launched. I plan to launch a crowdfunding campaign in October, which is going to be Breast Cancer Month. I just finished my fight with breast cancer, so I think just being authentic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just being authentic to the story and my journey as a founder, I think that's appropriate time to launch, and I want to do it for pre-sales and just getting the word out there of this product. It is kind of like a funny type of product, but not really, because there's a medical basis for it. But I think I just need help with marketing and getting the word out there and finding the right brand tone as well as product tone because of the nature of the product.
Any thoughts from the panel? We have the website up behind us.
All right, I can start. First of all, thank you for sharing this. This is a really cool product, but also very genuine to you. It comes from your experience. And I think that will be a major component of your brand voice. This is going to be you. And if you're trying to write it as somebody else, it's going to show, and it's going to sound like marketing. And instead of sounding like a person solving a problem that you have, that you know they have, but they're not ready to talk about, which is probably most of your customers. Okay. I think one of the challenges I see when I think about this product is there are so many use cases. And it's really hard to speak clearly to 5 use cases at once without getting people distracted. So my instinct is, and we'd have to dig into it, is that you pick 1 or 2 when you launch, and you focus really hard on those use cases. And if you get traction in a different use case, great, you can pivot. But you pick the ones that you feel the most comfortable with, or the ones that feel the most true to you, or that you get connections to. It doesn't necessarily matter, but you pick 1 or 2. You focus really hard on those. Okay. I think the other thing that I can't shake, and I don't know what to do with this thought yet, but there's a direct-to-consumer play here, but there's a really clear B2B sales model. And whether that means working with medical providers, working with waxing providers as a way that this product gets introduced to women when they most need it.
Doulas could be another one.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so I think the way that you describe your product is really clear. I know when you go into further into like the different customer segments, as she mentioned earlier. Oh, how do we scroll? Okay, so anyway, it walks through different things like if you're an athlete, if you're a new mom, whatever the situation thing, which I think is really great because you clearly explain those things. As she just mentioned, it might be a little bit too overwhelming, especially for reporters because they're like, what's the need? I think one thing that you could include in here is if you have any numbers, any kind of stats.
Okay.
A lot of times that's important for the press side for pitching the need for something. So they're kind of like, why should I care right now? Maybe you say something like, this percentage of mothers has dealt with this, or like this is the percentage of women across the country, or any kind of stat that helps to really explain who the demographic is and why this matters right now. I think as she mentioned, it will be important for you to have partnerships with maybe like doulas in the community, doctors. There are a lot of great like sex positive or sex health, women's health, sex tech companies that are out right now. Stuff like, I think you mentioned it, Thinks. There's Dame Products, which is a sex toy company by women.
I'm a member of the Women of Sex Tech.
Great.
Yeah.
So stuff like that is going to be great to have kind of cross partnerships between different communities. That's also a good way to find influencers. I know you mentioned that's kind of one of the challenges that you had as well. So yeah, I think you have something really strong, and so it's just kind of tightening that up and figuring out like the why now, why does it matter?
Okay, thank you.
I agree with what's been said. I do think figuring out the one or two segments and really going down in it, because otherwise there's so many channels, so many people, so many influencers. And you're like, oh my God, I'm one person. How do I focus? I would say, right now, the whole like D2C movement, it's really, really strong. Consumers are open and willing to buy directly. I do think if you have some videos or something else in Instagram stories, if you are looking for paid or other channels, it's probably the way to go these days. Okay. My friends, everyone says Instagram stories. Snapchat is kind of already dead. And Facebook ads are kind of expensive. So if you're looking to put any money to test, that's probably where I do. And if you're trying to figure out like which segment, you could, again, use these Instagram stories or these Facebook ads to kind of, at least if you have a little bit of budget, to test what resonates. I have a couple of friends, like in terms of the sex kind of positive movement, like my friends at Fur. I think you can, if you know them, like I feel like you have very similar story and similar target demographic, so partnering with them and all of that.
Okay.
What's your feedback on the website and how she can communicate what you're all talking about? Like, what can be improved, and what did you expect when you came to the site?
The biggest thing that was missing for me is pre-sales. You don't have to be ready to start taking my information, right?
Okay.
Like I was learning about your company for the first time. I was excited about what you were doing, and there wasn't a clear way for me to, I didn't find the quick way to tell you that.
Okay.
And to raise my hand. And I think as you get closer to launching your crowdfunding, which could be a great way to launch this, having even sections, like let's say you are targeting different markets, like the UTI pack, the pregnancy pack, they can be the same pack. It doesn't really matter, but that's going to tell you a lot about your customer and what they're clicking on, what they're interested in. Ideally, get their credit card information, but get their email address. It's fine, but learn a little bit more. I think you had a newsletter in here at the very bottom, but for me at least, like that's, I can't explain it psychologically, but like that feels like a black hole versus like I want this pack, raising my hand for something specific and tangible that I'm telling you that I'm going to want.
Thank you.
I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I thought it was clear, more clear than I've kind of seen for other earlier stage companies what you do. Like I see you have your tagline. I think just being extremely clear right away, like what are the two sentences that describe what it is. It doesn't have to be for a specific market, like calling out moms or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like where, like you said a good story that is not anywhere on the website about like, has anyone ever used like a heat pack for your elbow or like after running or whatever it is? Maybe you kind of call that out so people understand, and maybe if like people are getting it for family members or like dads are getting it for new moms, stuff like that. I definitely think that a lot of people are starting to think about that stuff. I actually just saw, have you seen Ali Wong? She has...
Yeah, the Netflix comedian.
Yeah, she was actually talking about some of this stuff. She talks about like issues with being a new mom, and she makes it really funny. So I feel like it really resonates with people today. There are actually people discussing it.
Okay.
Do you have anything about your personal story here, or did you purposely
It's
keep
on
it off?
the about
there is on
founder.
there.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you go to about,
So I think
yeah, it's all the way over there. Maybe I can bring that on the first page. Yeah, that's me.
it goes back to like what is your brand voice that you want to create. Similar, if you want to become the embodiment of that, right? A lot of these DTC companies, it's all about the founder. It's about the story. It's like why go directly to you rather than to some corporate company? And so sometimes and you have this, so I think it's pretty good. But if there's a way to elevate it or really showcase like your story and why you created this pack, because the site is very beautiful, but at the same time, it still feels a little bit medical or something. It doesn't have the whole like, oh my God, I resonate with you in your personal story.
Okay.
And knowing you, you have this amazing personality. You just like draw everybody in. Is there a reason why the copy and everything on the site is not as like punchy as you are?
I didn't make it that punchy because I feel like because I'm from New York, we're kind of all punchy, but that may not resonate with the mom that's in South Dakota that's looking for a pack. Sometimes I'm not sure if I should cross the line or just go all the way with it.
Try it.
Panel?
Right? Like you don't know until you try something. Like write something and send it to friends who don't sound like you or don't necessarily have your tone and see if it resonates with them. I think that about statement that I just read is super informative, but it sounds like it was written by a third party.
Oh, it was written by me. Okay.
Right? Meaning like it's
Right.
written by somebody who like you explained the product to and then they
Yeah.
wrote it in like very official marketing speak.
Okay.
Like there's like putting peas on your private parts sucks is not in there. Like you said that to us backstage and it made me laugh.
Okay.
It made me want to learn more.
It's kind of analogous to Roman, which is like erectile dysfunction meds, and they're selling the same stuff that people were selling before, but they're giving it in a good package. So cool. That's all the time we have for this
Thank
one.
you
Thank you,
so much.
Suzanne.
Good luck.
Next up, we have Samantha John. Samantha, can we get her up, please? Hey. So tell us about Hopscotch and where you're at.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hopscotch. And Hopscotch, as you can see from our website, is a platform where you can make games and learn to code, specifically if you are a kid, but actually anyone could do it. And it's an iPad and iPhone app. It's for kids ages 8 to 12 who are kind of creative or into tech or just want to be able to build their own software. And we've been around since 2012. We launched in the App Store in 2013. And I think at this point we have about 12 million downloads and about...
Clap that up, please. Amazing. Not easy.
Thank you. About 300,000 monthly users, and most of them are using the product for free right now. We launched a subscription service a little over almost 2 years ago now, and we're kind of in the process of trying to figure out how to get all those free users to become paying users.
What's the difference between the free side and the paid side?
Right now, there's a couple features that only the paid users can use, being able to import your own art into the games that you create, and some of our content is paid. We're actually going to test out changing the business model a little bit soon, where we're going to make you pay for the number of projects that you make.
Any thoughts from the panel? What you got?
I thought it was very clear immediately what you guys do, which was great. Like, make games, learn to code, and it's clear that it's childlike and for children, so I thought that was cool.
On the subscription side, which is probably the paid is where you're really focused on. So what like, so is it parents who's buying it, or is it children, and do people gift it? I feel like this is an amazing gift too, but
We've done gifts in the past, but
Yeah.
it's hard because it's kind of against Apple's rules. They want you to get an iTunes gift card for the kid and then have them pay, which actually, like, we do a lot of sales in January because kids have a gift card at that time. But it's mostly parents who pay. We also, it's used in a lot of schools by teachers with their classes, and we do offer a subscription for classrooms. But most of the classes right now are using it for free. So it's very much about trying to get that funnel of the kid uses it, then they show it to their parent, and they get their parent to pay, or the kid uses it in class, and then they go home and get their parent to download it and pay. So the kind of funnel from someone using it and liking it to them actually purchasing it is a little bit complicated because we're dealing with kids.
So some of the information you shared with us in advance, I think two things jumped out at me. One is you have a lot of different types of paid users, which makes your positioning and pricing and marketing way more complicated. And I get that because it's hard to want to close any of those doors, because if there's, you're designed for 8 to 12, but if there's a group of 30-somethings that love your product and pay for you, you don't want to shut them out, but you also don't want to market to them necessarily. So I think one thing that I felt was thinking about this from a parent perspective, the reason to pay wasn't as a parent, either on like the kind of early time I spent on the website, but I've played with the app as well. Like, it wasn't totally clear to me what I was going to get as a parent that would make my kids' experience better for paying. So I don't know that like a kid is necessarily going to be the one that drives the payment that often necessarily. So I don't know if that's a description or if it's actually a feature that needs to be locked into the paid version in order to make it really clear. Like, as a parent, I want to be able to do blank, and that makes it worth the subscription cost to me. I like that idea that, you know, your kid plays with it at school and they come home and they get their parent to pay for it. I think that probably is easier than building more education tools, since selling into education is incredibly hard. I know you guys are trying. But I feel like when I looked at all the choices, it was like, all right, parents buying for kids seems to be the single biggest chunk. If you were going to focus somewhere, how do you speak to those parents more clearly?
because you can still use like all the functionalities of the app right without it. And it's just like adding more artwork. But do kids, I mean, is that enough of a bonus, right? And are they learning more or doing more or using the app more as a result of adding in their artwork or these tools that motivate a parent to really want to put their credit card down? So I would review like all, I'm sure you guys have done this, but review all the different possible features that you guys currently have and figure out, could you gate some of them a little bit more, or you try to let people play with some of these higher end tools and then kind of say, okay, the trial's over now, like go back, and then if you want to keep it back, you know, put in your credit card.
Yeah, like how did you come to that decision to gate that part of the app? What was like the process for you to figure that out?
Well, we decided to gate the drawing tool and the image importing because basically that was the next feature we were going to build at the time we decided to start selling subscriptions. So one thing we haven't done a lot of, which we will have to do eventually, is try to convert the free users to paid by taking things away from them. Like, we really haven't taken anything away from anyone ever, but they still get mad at us. So even right now, a big reason that people pay right now is that there are these instructional videos that will teach you how to do things in Hopscotch, and a couple of them are free, and then the rest are paid, and people will often convert in order to get all the videos. But we never, none of the paid videos were ever free.
So
We've never even taken those away.
So I would definitely test that, actually, because you want to show more instructional videos to show all the things that you could possibly do. And then they're like, oh, I can do all this, and now I want to pay. So I think, really going back and evaluating what do you gate and what do you not. You also mentioned a point about, the people get mad at you, but you're always going to have haters. And as a business, sometimes like you have to get rid of your worst clients. Like, actually, that will make you so much happier. Like, I've gotten rid of, we can all like nod and smile. So I would be okay with it making those hard decisions, because if you can be profitable and more profitable, you can build more features and deliver even a better product.
Yeah, I'll take that one step far, which is like the the thing that would make your users the most angry at you is if you cease to exist. Right? Like, and that's like, by figuring out how to be profitable and to run a sustainable business, you are serving them. And I know it doesn't feel like that in the moment, and angry users is the worst, and angry iPhone reviews is even more so because there's nothing you can do about it. Like, I've been there. But at the end of the day,
now, actually,
good.
I
worst.
actually appeared in a video for Apple about how to answer your reviews in the App Store.
Awesome. Great customer service. But, and I think there's ways that you can also figure out how to pull back things that may not be even really heavily used features. But if you're creating videos on how to use them and they're lightly used features and they go into the paid version, and then you release a public video on all the cool things you can do if you have this feature, you can create a little bit of a cycle that makes your free users want to do that thing.
What do you guys think about the idea of cutting off the number of projects you can make and having that be the paywall? That's the next thing we're planning to test.
How many projects do people currently do, and how big is the pain point is it?
It really varies. Like, some kids have thousands of projects. Some people only have one. But if you're into it, you're going to have a lot of projects.
Those people all don't pay at all right now.
No. Some of them do. And we do have some subscribers. We're about 2/3 of the way to profitable, but not a lot of our most active users don't pay. And I think something that's hard is that they're kids, so they don't have buying power. They have to talk their parents into it, and they don't have their own money necessarily. So it does feel hard to cut off people who are really loyal Hopscotch users and creating great content on our platform. So the other part of Hopscotch is that you can publish your games and other kids can play them. So, but it might just be sucks for them.
Well, does it have to be? So part of growth is new customers. So I think there's ways that you could grandfather those people in. You can give them a subscription, and that's lost revenue, but it's not really cost you. That's the joy of a subscription game. And so you could say our top 10% most active users, we're going to give a year. It doesn't have to be forever, and grandfather them in as part of a big transition like that, especially if you're going to use something like number of projects. I mean, that feels like a potentially really powerful, especially if it's a small number. If it's 2 or 3 projects max until I pay, you're going to have a lot of people who will hit that paywall.
Cool. Well, we're out of time, but thank you, Samantha. It's good to hear about it.
Thank you, guys.
Next up, we have Jacob Gordon of Artiphon. Jacob, where are you at? Give it up for Jacob. We're going to set up his device. Can we plug in the audio? So if I was an investor and I had money, I would put it into Jacob's company. That is going to be the start of my intro. This is one of the coolest products I've ever seen. One of the most amazing founding stories and, showing resilience that I've seen. So, I would rate them very highly. So, are we good? Yeah. So, Jacob, what is Artiphon? And, do you want to give us a demo?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for the intro. That was great. I'll try to say as little as possible to mess that up. I'm Jacob Gordon, co-founder and CMO of Artiphon. We're a consumer electronics, consumer tech company building hardware and software, trying to reinvent what musical instruments are. How do human beings interact with music? 2 out of 3 human beings on this planet will try to be musically creative at some point, and we think that is an unfulfilled impulse, and that number can even be higher if people knew what was possible. Augmented creativity is the word we use for this a lot. So our first product is this, which is called the Instrument One. We call this type of product a multi-instrument, and I'll show you what it does. So it can be played like a guitar, with strings and frets. It can be played like a violin, fretlessly. It can be more like a piano. drums. And then for those of us who don't know chords, if you watch what my left hand is doing, this is sort of like artsy Guitar Hero mode. We call that smart strum. And other interesting features like my right hand isn't good at picking notes. You can do that for me. So it plugs into your iPhone, your iPad, or your computer. It can make any sound imaginable. And it's $399. It's a product on the market. We launched it on Kickstarter a couple of years ago. It still is the biggest crowdfund for a musical instrument on any platform. It was $1.3 million. Time Magazine put it on their list of best inventions of that year. And then we got to launch it through the MoMA Design Store in New York and Tokyo, which was an amazing honor. So it's out on the market, we sell it, we make revenue, and we're working on what the future of this product line looks like.
So what is your biggest challenge?
So phase one, where we are now, this product is a super expressive digital music controller for the way people are making music now. What modern young music producers, or probably many of these people in the room, are using Ableton Live and FL Studio, even GarageBand, to make the kind of digital music we hear on the radio. That's phase one, selling it to prosumers. Phase two is about a terrifically fun, truly creative experience. Picture Guitar Hero meets like the best music class you could ever imagine in the world. Truly creative, but so fun and engaging that all of us just want to go home and do it. That's phase two. That's what we're working on now. The shift that needs to happen for that to happen is, of course, on the product side, but I think the thing that would be fun to talk about today is how do you go from being a product to being a brand, from offering people just features to feelings and community and being part of something that speaks to deeper creative impulses and a sense of belonging, not just what can this app and this piece of hardware do for me. Is that too abstract, or is there something to bite onto there?
I think that makes sense. I had browsed your website earlier, and I didn't really hear the story that you mentioned, which was like your why now, that you mentioned percentage of people that wanted to learn. What was that stat?
2 out of 3 people try to make music, yeah.
Yeah,
at some
so
point.
is that anywhere on here?
No.
I think that's a really cool story, because then maybe for me, I don't know how to play any instruments at all. If you were like, wow, there's, more people than, so many people actually want to try to learn these things, and this makes it really easy. So this one is for people that are pros, or is this something that, you said the next phase is to target somebody like
Where
me?
we are now is a lot of what you see on this website, which is we're not talking about making it for everyone. We're talking about if you're into this type of music technology stack, this is something that you might need to add to your home studio as quickly as possible. But that only scales so far, because there are only so many people in the world who want to do that and are ever going to do that. It's still a very intimidating pro-level thing that most of us who do try give up on pretty quick. Most people who download Ableton Live quit because it's a hornet's nest of complexity.
When you're thinking about a brand, I think you really have to tap into the human emotions. And there's usually a couple, like one of our friends does this really, there's a couple archetypes that people focus on. I don't know if you are familiar with these.
No, please.
But there's like archetypes of being like a hero, or the archetype of everyman, or the archetype of wanderer. And you think about iconic brands that we have, they all kind of fall into one of these like 9 archetypes that you can build. And then all your brand and the messaging kind of falls and flows as a result of that. And it helps clarify kind of everything from your PR pitch to your ads, your paid ads, to your content. And so for here, it's like, what is the image or evocation that you want people to start associating with your brand? Because right now it's kind of like all about trying to be professional, right? And so if you're trying to go for everyman, it's like helping that everyday person become that, their own hero, or become their own expert at something, and really kind of focus on what is the brand identity, and then from there everything will kind of fall in place.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, to be echoing one of the talks we heard earlier, I get the really clear why on the product, but I don't yet get a really clear why for the brand. It's like, what is the purpose for existing for the brand outside of this product, if this product didn't exist yet? And that may be for a different audience, right? As you think about the next audience, you're not speaking to pros anymore. And so is it, everybody can be a musician, and that's what we stand for as a company, and we're going to prove it with this product? Or is it, music practice is work, but it should be play, and we're going to show you why it's play? Like, those are emotional statements that are out. I wouldn't have thought of that product as being a pro product until you said it. I would have already thinking about my nephews who are in elementary school who think that they're drummers and who want a pro type product.
That makes me so much happier,
yeah.
by the way.
No, but to your point, what you just
pros
told me,
are fine. They don't need
what you
me.
just told me was that they'd probably get pretty frustrated because it's not built for them yet. There's not like
Totally true.
the cool, goofy graphics on the screen that are going to encourage them when they get into their
Why
failure
should they
mode.
get up tomorrow and want to do it again if today was
Exactly.
frustrating? That's
Exactly.
the code to
So
crack.
what is the Guitar Hero mode?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
What's your timeline on the other product? Because I think that's the other thing that I walked away from was the brand needs to have a purpose. And if that purpose is to set you up to sell a future product, it's going to be really hard to put the work into that you need to build a brand when you're building and selling a product. I think if you're like, hey, this is on the immediate horizon, we need to start building the community for it right now.
Yeah.
Then have that buyer in mind and start speaking to them. And then when you introduce the product, it'll feel natural.
Yeah, so true. And we've always built product and brand totally simultaneously because we're just a small startup. So these are very much overlapping departments, so to speak. We have stuff for this holiday, we have stuff for next holiday, hardware and software are on different timelines, but it's a wonderful question, which is if you're really trying to set up that mind space for people to inhabit so that they know how to perceive what this product is, especially if you're trying to defy some of the norms of the baskets people already want to put something into, how do you time that? How do you critical path that so that you're setting the cultural stage for your product to enter into?
So currently, the community of Artiphon users, are they connected to each other? Do they talk to each other? Do you guys communicate with them? Like, how does that community?
I think that's a huge component. The community building is what creates a brand that actually means something and isn't just graphics. So at the moment, people connect in certain ways, and we do. We have a forum, and people nerd out about MIDI mapping and feature requests. So many feature requests, and social media. We aggregate people's content every month. We do community roundups, and we do contests. We put people in touch with each other. We get to curate the Ace Hotels Artist in Residency program in August. We get to bring in very kind of different types of artists to all be part of the same creative space together, which brings different audiences together, hopefully creates conversations. But all of those are just kind of like seeds. The watering and the nurturing I think is the hard part, and that's a big part of the challenge coming up for us.
And one of the challenges too is like, especially if you're so pro now and you go to consumer, right? I'm sure you're thinking about it. Do you alienate the pros who are like, oh, I'm highfalutin, I have this great tool, and then they're like, oh, now it's so watered down. So there's certain, we'll have to think about that.
You can alienate people really easily, and especially in a creative sphere, a culturally very loaded sphere. There's an aspirational pull always going on, and so you need the people who we admire and want to be to stay cool and stay there so that we can think that we could be them someday, but also not be so alienated that we just give up and don't want to do it. I think what's going on with Musical.ly and apps like that is really fascinating because it's scrambling the lines of that hierarchy that I just articulated. I think I'm getting old and like that's how I think about things, and kids don't care. They're just like, wow.
Yeah.
That's what they do if you know any.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're out of time. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Matt Hamilton. Where are you at, Matt? There he is. Cool.
Hello.
So, what are you guys working on? And tell us a little bit about your background, too.
Yeah, so we are working on Ense. It is a social audio app. It's great. We're going right after that amazing demo. I really enjoyed it. But basically, we allow you to record up to 5-minute sound bites and share them publicly or privately. We're currently in beta on iOS, so we have about 5,000 users that right now are talking about life, making jokes, singing, and having conversations kind of asynchronously across the world. And do you want to?
Yeah, do you have your phone? Can I borrow it?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Thank you. Yeah, as for musicians, comedians, anybody who creates audio-based content, right now it's the only social media platform out there for audio-based content. Instagram, Twitter, that doesn't really, display what kind of work artists like that are doing. So here we go. This is Ense right here. You hold down this little pink button and you say something. Hey, everybody, we're at Caveat, and how big is this crowd? Like 60 people?
Yeah.
All right, and then you release. Little text box comes up right here. And then you can just tag somebody. I'm going to tag myself because my phone is lost in a cab. And hopefully somebody will see this and ends me back. And then I can... All right, so you see that little green thing? It's pretty far away, but it says private. I can actually take this off and make it public. Actually, I'm going to do that. Everybody can see that I post. So yeah, that's a public post that'll show up on a feed just like it would on, any other social media thing, except this is not social media, it's social audio. If I made that private, it would have gone to my phone, and then Matt or me on Matt's phone, and I could have a private conversation. But yeah, that's Ense right there.
And what's your biggest challenge right now?
Yeah, I think so. I'm kind of focused on product and engineering. Celeste's focused on marketing and growth. So we kind of have two challenges on both sides of that. So one, right now, kind of from a larger public perspective, voice is becoming more of a thing from a technology perspective. We're talking to robots. We're dictating things, and so it is becoming more natural. But as we try and grow and onboard more people, beyond kind of the circle that we're growing, most actively, right? For people to open it up and have a good experience, understand not only that new behavior, but a little bit about what that product is a challenge, specifically around both listening and sharing something, talking or recording something, right, yourself. And so from the product side, when we think about onboarding, the biggest challenge is how do we get to that aha moment for you, especially for people who are not necessarily first comfortable with, hey, let me record my voice on this app and share it out. But also we don't want to start necessarily everyone with, hey, listen to a bunch of other people, because it's really about sparking that conversation. And so you don't want to get into that mode of, yeah, this app is just about listening to things, and you shouldn't say anything. You shouldn't be a part of that conversation.
Yeah, so it's one of those projects that you really have to use in order to understand the feeling of it. So I guess the biggest challenge would be how do we get this into the hands of people? And we've sort of come across a lot of different strategies, but if you think about how you found yourselves on, if you use Snapchat, Instagram, all these things, most people probably heard about it through a friend, right? Did you guys hear, anybody Snapchat, did you guys hear about Snapchat through a friend? People still on Snapchat at all? Nobody. Okay. But yeah, so imagine if you're in some sort of team, some sports team, or in theater production, and half the people, or even less than half the people, are on this, having a conversation or having a party at someone's house. You'd want to be there, right? So if your friends are on something, then you want to be in that conversation. You want to be a part of that. So part of our strategy in this challenge is to open it up to not just our friends and their friends, is that just get groups of friends into it so they can all have this very intimate and better way of communicating with one another when they're not in the same room.
Awesome. Panel, what are your thoughts on Ense as the website and also the community that they're trying to build? What's the strategy for them?
For the message and how you're communicating it, is this the only way you're doing that as of now? Just this two-sentence thing here?
Currently on the website, yes. I will say that the majority of people right now are experiencing it via the apps, specifically iOS. But we are open for any feedback around how we can redesign or relaunch it.
Yeah, once again, I like the story that you said about how it's people who want to interact with sound. You said it's comedians, artists, whoever this is. I think when you're, maybe you do this in the app already, but the way that you describe it here is just, to me, it was a little bit vague. I was wondering, what would I say here? I'm not a singer. What would I be shouting about? So maybe, what are people are saying? So maybe if you're, I think you just need to describe more clearly, what is the need right now? Why should people care? Which eventually when you get to speaking to reporters, they're going to ask that as well. They're like, oh, there's so many apps. Like, what exactly does it do right now? Who are you trying to reach? Maybe giving some scenarios of that. Like, we have comedians who want to hear themselves, and they want to see how people interact with like their dialogue, or whatever some of the other use cases are. So I think you need to explain that better. If you guys have a founding story about why you did this, something that makes it a little bit more emotional, I think would be helpful as well, in just showing like this is why we came up with this product, and kind of people seeing you guys here and talking about it. I think that would be really helpful.
You said there was those moments, right, when people really clicked with the products, those aha moments. Like, what are those? And use that for that, because I'm still trying to figure out what is the aha moment.
I feel like everybody has a different one, but for me, it was definitely private communication. I do love posting publicly, but just this, specifically one of my best friends and I, we talk constantly when we're not together and we are together. And when you have like a long story to tell, you text somebody and you're like, this is too much to text, I just want to call you. Right, I'll wait to see you in person. Having Ense really helped us tell these stories in these like dynamic ways. I just love hearing her laugh and tell me who she ran into, or play this song. Look, our song's playing in the store. Things like that, and because you can't always have a phone call, you can't always have a phone conversation. And another moment that clicked for me was I was just in Korea, and my dad was watching my puppy. And, it's literally 12 hours, well, in Japan, 12 hours behind. So you flip the AM to PM. So I'd wake up in the morning, and my dad would have sent me updates on my dog. And that's just something that, like, I don't think my dad would have emailed me twice a day about my dog. So that was, like, a bit of a click for me. But what about you, Matt? Click for you?
Do you guys categorize this as a social app or a communication app?
We categorize it as a social app. I mean, I think part of the power that we're trying to share with people is having public conversations, right? I don't think that element is something that we want to let go of, and I think it's something that can be really powerful across the globe. When you look at audio as a format, it's lighter weight than video. You don't need people jumping up, worrying about their hair, how they look. Also, it can be very distracting from what they're saying, right? Yet, it's also much more rich than text. You can hear exactly, their emotion, laughing, things in the background, the environment that they're a part of. So having that mix and being able to share that in a community. When I say public, I don't necessarily mean everyone all at once. I think there's also a power of groups, right? Different communities having those types of conversations.
What are some examples of the groups?
So like a private group. So like within Ense, we all brainstorm ideas about different features on Ense in a private group. So let's say we're talking about a feature, a specific button. Say, hey guys, what do you think about a button that does this? And then everybody will respond on their own time in that private conversation. So that would be like a private group conversation, whereas like a public thing would be everybody in the Ense community would be able to see those posts.
Yeah, and so on that side of things, we've got right now a lot of musicians and singers. So there's actually like a challenge right now out there to basically sing a snippet of Lean On Me, and everyone's kind of sharing that and trying their challenge out together. And that's pretty cool with lots of different people from different backgrounds who don't necessarily know each other personally.
So that's a differentiation that I don't get from your site right now.
Yeah.
And I realize your website's not your primary source, but for discovery, the App Store is what it is. You're at its mercy to some degree. And if I'm going to try to explain to a friend that there's something cool I just downloaded, I might send them to your website.
Yeah.
And having visuals or having that story. And I think like the live feed is fun. But as a first-time user, when I went to it a couple of days ago, like I didn't know or care that it was a live feed. I would have probably rather seen a greatest hits, like a couple of examples of like, what is this at its best? Because I clicked on some weird stuff. I was like, that is somebody making farting noises. Like, I don't know why I want to download this right now. And I didn't click long enough. You have an interesting challenge. I think if I was to download Twitter today because it was a DM app, I would tell you I have text messages. Even though probably the most powerful conversations I have on a regular basis on Twitter are DMs, but that's not why it's on my phone. I think what this has the capability to be as a broadcast app is where its power and also it's totally confusing. I don't know why I want this, but maybe I should try and leaning into that hard, figuring out what is that use case of why I want to listen from the source? What is different about listening to someone instead of reading what they say? And know that their probably most powerful use case is going to be DM, so build your product that way. Build your product to lead them to their aha moment, but build your marketing to lead them to the why. Because I can record a voice message and send it to my mom, right? So I'm not going to download the app for that. I'm going to download it because I want to tell this story to this room on Ense, and then I'm going to end up having DM conversations.
Great way to end it. Thank you, Alex,
Thank
and
you.
the
We got
panel.
time, somebody said.
Great stuff. So thank you to our amazing panel for their feedback. We're going to take a 2.5-minute break to take these chairs off the stage, and then we'll be right back with May.
This.